Welcome once again to Context BA webinar series. Today is the terminal event of our 40-day-long heritage campaign. Perhaps you know Context is web-based knowledge platform. Apart from our regular publishing activities, occasionally we are organizing online seminar and symposium on the key issues related to built environment. We collaborate with community organizations, universities, and individuals to bring together scholars, thinkers, and researchers with common interests from all around the world. We discuss issues, ideas, projects that focus on the topic of our mutual concern. On this occasion, we have guests from Portugal, United States, Australia, and Bangladesh as panelists who will speak on various aspects of heritage management from global to local perspectives. Thank you, panel members, for joining with us. We are honored. This is not an isolated talk. Rather, we started this event 6 weeks ago by launching 2 competitions back-to-back with an aim to engage young creative minds in the awareness building process. Thanks to participants for your enthusiastic responses and thought-provoking high-quality submissions. We wish to take these initiatives a step further by organizing a public exhibition in near future. Can you switch to next slide, please? Thank you. The award event held on March 9 was another event of rejoice where we invited world-renowned architects, including Zaha Hadid Architects and Cox Architecture, to present their projects. So before we begin, I would like to express my gratitude to the viewers who are watching us, our event partners, Association of Bangladeshi Architects in Australia, and nevertheless, all my cohorts who have been volunteering in conducting background research and follow-up publications works. At this stage, I would like to invite architect Shomik Wise, who is the moderator of today's event. Architect Shomik is the General Secretary of Bangladeshi Architects in Australia. Other than working in various architecture firms, Shomik has been involved with the university sector in Australia for over 15 years, working on campus improvements and developments with Sydney University, Western Sydney University, and currently at Monash University. I request architect Shomik to start the main sessions with a brief introduction of the panel members. Architect Shomik, over to you.
Thank you, Architect Simon Kavir. Many of you already know he's the founding editor of contextbd.com, a knowledge platform on art, architecture, and design. I would like to also thank Architect Sajjad Hussain, who will run the Q&A and the summary session at the end of session 3. Both him and Simon were behind all the research leading up to today's webinar. Good evening from Australia, and welcome to the Cities, Landmark and Memories Symposium, hosted by Context in association with the Bangladeshi Architects in Australia. The event also coincides with the occasion of 50th anniversary, the Golden Jubilee celebration of independence of Bangladesh. I would like to pay my respect to millions who laid down their lives to get the country we now call as Bangladesh. Every moment we observe in our lives become a part of our history as soon as the next moment arrives. No particular moment is lost forever. Rather, the imprints of moments can remain in layers deposited onto another, perhaps waiting to be decoded. Just like that, a historic site, landscape, or city merged in layers underneath the ground of a currently live urban settlement, a very interesting subject to be decoded, especially when only available input is literature and practical site itself. Raymond Williams once said, cultural history is the documentary of everydayness. All the imprints or memories of cities of our hometown or birthplaces are cast both in tangible and intangible forms, not just through architecture, but also through their history, story, folklore, and other literatures. Because the collective and mass memory associated with these places and buildings in continuously changing space-time metrics in the city or town offers us a urban identity and scope of placemaking. So both tangible and intangible cultural heritage in a given city express, embody popular memories of a city through a complex interplay of production, consumption, reconstruction, interpretation, and diverse tactics of remembrance. There have been many seminars, webinars, discussions on a regular basis recent days, more focused on Dhaka and other local areas, specifically on architectural conservation. The overarching goal of today's event is to raise public awareness by engaging people and build environment professionals around the world through critical discussions and global views on heritage conservation, both tangible and intangible. Bangladesh, being one of the biggest delta in the world, has gone through many cultural changes over many centuries, naming the ancient period, 3rd century BC to 11th century Sultanate period, the Mughal period, the British period. So there has been overlapping cultural symbolism, leaving all the previous period signs, buildings, artifacts, rotting and dilapidation for many years, but the intangible part of the culture remained somewhat. As a result, we have reminiscence of those times in our everyday life, in our songs, cultural festivities, and overall colorfulness that transcended the test of time. Shakespeare once said, "Past is the prologue of the future." Tagore asked us to look at the history to see the mixture of activities. Dhaka, as one of the most dense megacities in the capital and the capital of Bangladesh, has more than 400 years of rich history with many iconic buildings and memorable places, having both tangible and intangible heritage values. There are 35 megacities with 22 of them in Asia. Today, over 200,000 people per day are part of the rural-urban migration that is going to make around 4.9 billion by 2030 living in African and Asian slums alone. The proportion of the population will jump from 2% urban population in 1800 to 70% by 2050. This makes it very challenging for designers, planners, and decision makers of the cities. As a result, developments in Dhaka, along with country's soaring economy, the new urban infrastructures are invading the places of aging buildings and have given rise to many heated debates around heritage protection. Today, we will hear from the panelists about them all and others, how we and other nations see these past heritages in ever-growing imprints in changing landscapes of our civilization. Why does our past matter? How do heritage, both tangible and intangible, contribute to a city's image and identity? How can we rebuild our city without taking away its past? Or how old and new can coexist while regenerating a city? What role do institutions and communities play? We would like to know, how can we encourage plurality and awareness? What can we do with the places that are already lost? Is the role of literature, where is the role of literature in knowing about our culture? How do we make these places popular again? How can we preserve our past and simultaneously build for the future? Without further delay, let's get into our sessions. Today, we are very fortunate to have so many leading academics, practitioners, policymakers, experienced in heritage as our speakers. First is Philip Temodo Barata, professor and UNESCO chair of Intangible Cultural Heritage of University of Évora, Portugal. We have Nigar Reza, architect and planners at Department of Agriculture, Water and Environment in Australia. Dr. Mizanur Rashid, senior lecturer, School of Architecture, Built Environment at Deakin University. Dr. Sajid bin Doja, head and associate professor, State University of Bangladesh, and current assistant general secretary at Institute of Architects in Bangladesh. Dr. Adnan Morshed, professor of at School of Architecture and Planning at Catholic University of America. Dr. Abu Said Ahmed, professor and dean at the University of Asia Pacific, and Humaira Zaman, head in the Department of Architecture of Bangladesh University. Welcome to you all. For the smooth running of tonight's program, we hope to finish around 2 hours plus minus. Please keep your microphone in mute unless it is your turn to share your wisdom. If you have any comments, please use the chat box below in your screen to type your views. Now, to our program tonight, we'll conduct this discussions in 3 segments or sessions. Session 1 is our past matters, will run for 40 minutes with key topics in tangible, intangible heritage, urban identity, collective memory, regeneration, placemaking, global strategies, and good practices. We have 4 speakers in this session, Professor Philip Temudo Barata, Nigar Reza, Dr. Mizanur Rashid, and Sajid bin Doja. In session 2, we discuss about challenged present of the treasured past, the key topics being the protection of archaeological and modern heritage, national policy and impact on urban heritage methods in practice, challenges, urban renewals. The speakers are Professor Adnan Morshed, Professor Abu Said Ahmed, and Humaira Zaman. We will pause the discussion to go to a wonderful presentation from our young, energetic heritage photographer, Hasinur Reza, titled A Photographic Expedition to Archaeological Sites in Bangladesh. Then in session 3, named The Future of the Past, where we look for not so much for the solutions, but directions with key topics of adaptive reuse, sustainable heritage management, institutional advocacy, governance, and civic society participations. In this session, all the speakers will go around and give their advice and suggestions. All the panelists are asked to contribute in this session. So we start session 1, our past matters. The theme is protection of cultural heritage in global perspectives. Our first presenter tonight is Dr. Philip Temudo Barata, who is a full professor at the University of Evora since 2004, where he teaches several disciplines and seminars connected with history, especially medieval, heritage, and museology. He is a former member of steering committee of the Master of Museology, member of scientific and pedagogic committee of the Erasmus Mundus Master of Techniques, in brief TPTI. He is a member of steering committee at HeriMed Association, which stands for Association for Documentation, Preservation, and Enhancement of the Euro-Mediterranean Cultural Heritage. He is also a member and vice director of CIDHUS Research Center at University of Evora, that stands for Center for Interdisciplinary History, Culture, and Societies. He is also a visiting professor at Cape Verde University and associate member of Centre d'Histoire des Techniques at Paris Sorbonne, pro bono manager at Foundation of Orient Occident, and last but not least, UNESCO chair in Intangible Heritage and Traditional Know-how Linking Heritage. Dr. Philip.
Thank you. The first thing I want to say is two things. The first one is to publicly thanks the invitation you have made to me. So I appreciate this very much. Thank you for the invitation. And the second thing is, I'd like to say that besides an academic person that I am for 40 years, I like very much to deal with the practical things too. And this is important because what I'm going to say deals with this part of my work. It is the practical side of the work. Okay, so I have 10 minutes, so I will try to be very brief. And I'd like very much to call your attention for two institutions that have very interesting programs about the subjects we are dealing with. The first one is a very nice program called Habitat. It is the biggest program of United Nations called Habitat that deals with cities. And from there, it is very interesting what they say about these cities. Two things from there. It is the explosive urban growth, especially in Asia, that we are assisting now. And the second thing, that this is something that occur all over the world. It is the changes of the demographic profile in the cities. And this is something quite important because we are dealing with a population that doesn't look anymore as we used to see the cities very homogeneous in the past times. The second thing is UNESCO, because UNESCO with this convention, with these documents, they call up also they underline the importance of two things that I'd like very much to propose the following up these guidelines of what they are doing. The first one is the recommendation of 2011, and what we are doing about these recommendations, because I work with UNESCO, try to implementing this part of this agenda for the implementation of recommendation of 2011. The second thing is the problem of the cities became a place of diversity. And in the city, it's very easy to lose our memories. And it is one of the most important problem is this loss of memories. And let me say that most of the people that come to the city, they come usually from small rural areas where there is a kind of horizontal society, where family is the base of the society. I could call it horizontal societies, where family, social cohesion, the interest for older people is and the importance of older people is important. And then they arrive to the city. The city is the place where social cohesion is a substitute by vertical organization. I vote to my deputy. I vote to my trade union. So it is something where the mobility of the city against the stability of the rural areas. And the impact of this is terrible. What heritage concern? Even when we remember that heritage is a social construction, in the city is where we are discussing which is our heritage. And for trying to, in a few words, trying to explain what I want to say, I have a very small video clip, 42 seconds, about the growth of Tehran in Iran. It is very interesting because it goes too fast. It is, I call up your attention in 1850, there you can see a point in the screen, and in the right side, up in the right side, it is the date, 1850. And this date became to going on, the dates, till 2000. And please pay attention what's happened to this small point. It was the city of Tehran in 1850. Please, Shashat, can you share the screen, please? Hello? This is the point. Well, it is not. Is it possible?
Do you want me to share this screen, Sajjad?
Yes, please.
Do you want me? Yeah, sure.
Is it possible to share the screen?
Yes, I think Simon is doing it right now. Just in a few seconds.
I thought it was easier to share the organizer to share the screen than myself. Well, let me say while it does begin, this is a work done by an atelier of architects of New York architects. Okay, this is the point of Tehran. It is this point in the middle, and the date are up here in going on. Okay, so look what's happened. Okay, thank you. This is what happened with our cities and with our heritage. We are never prepared to protect our heritage. We are never prepared to deal with the new heritage. And what is happening in our societies because of that is two or three things that are important to remember. The first thing is that most of the people that come to this city become to living in ghettos because they are much more close to the people they know from his own land. So the cities became a kind of this ghetto policies that we are assisting in the city is the result of this suddenly growth of the city. The second thing is these irrational behaviors where when we are dealing with the city, because we don't know very well what to do with these waves of people coming to the city. Of course, social segregation intolerance is the common policies that we have behind these situations. And so there is two things very important here. The first thing is what to do with the heritage that belong to the inhabitants of the city. And the second thing that we should remember is these people that are coming to the city, they have their own heritage. So the difficult part is public policies, being able to build new public policies. Public policies nowadays is the only way out to deal with this kind of problems. And what I'm in the book that I recently have wrote, what I try to explain is how to come out with these public policies regarding the protection of heritage, but also to to receive these people that are living in the living in the city, these newcomers of the city. And I like very much to call up your attention. There was a singer, it is Bob Marley, that he began this reggae began to see in the margin of the society. Now is in the list of UNESCO. So this movement from the side to the center is a very interesting example how we can deal with these subjects. And these public policies, when I wrote this book, what I've tried to show is how to do it, how to deal with this situation. And there is something that I call the living lab experiences, that what we propose is the only way out for this is negotiation. Democracy and negotiation, this is the only way out to deal with these problems of the people that live in the city and the newcomers that have different heritage, new social practices. Because, you know, one thing that is very interesting to conclude in this situation is identities change. It's not so difficult than this, but it is very difficult to change by force, but identities change, they merge. And so the question is how to build up these new policies with negotiations. Yes, negotiation with whom? Negotiation with the people that think the city, something like us. Negotiation with the people that run the city, because they are the producers of these public policies, and negotiate with the people that are living in the city. And there is in the YouTube a video, it is in Portuguese, that I try to produce about a small experience that we have in Everest, the city where my university is. 40 years ago, it is a very interesting experience because we have tried to do that, and it ran well. The problem is, this is a public policy difficult to have, because we must insist during many years on it. And this is something that I'd like to remember. Identities could change if there is a room for this negotiation experience, because I don't know any better method than democracy for doing these kind of things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Philip. That was a very insightful discussion. And now I'm moving to discuss more with architect Nigar Reza, who will talk to us about protecting the cultural heritage and the need for conservation values associated with it, and what we need to conserve the value and for the future generation. And Nigar Reza is a senior heritage and conservation analyst with the Government of Australia at the Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment. She has been working on strategic policies and programs on heritage and conservation for the last 20 years. She graduated in architecture from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, followed by her master's degree in urban and regional planning from Asian Institute of Technology, AIT, in Thailand. She also completed a postgraduate diploma in Geographic Information Systems from Melbourne University. She started her career in the field of heritage and planning with the Australian government, which involved in whole of government heritage related policy development, projects, research, collection and analysis of data, and community involvement in the heritage planning. She also produced community-based heritage study, a primary research report to develop heritage local environmental plan. Her work also involves analysis of historic heritage significant places nominated for national and Commonwealth heritage listing, and coordination, management, and technical advice on the development of heritage strategies for the heritage significant properties owned or controlled by Commonwealth agencies. Her experience, in addition to the academic background, allowed her to demonstrate strong skills in delivering strategic policies and programs on heritage and conservation. Nigar is a fellow of the Institute of Architects Bangladesh and a member of International Council of Monuments and Sites. Architect Nigar, over to you.
Thank you, Shomik. I have been living and working in Australia for over 25 years now, and working with the Australian government in the field of historic heritage. My birth country is, of course, Bangladesh. And good morning, everyone. Good evening. Tonight, I have divided my presentation in 4 segments. Firstly, I'll brief on what is heritage. Secondly, why do we need to protect heritage and what heritage protection means? Then I'll share my experience in Australia in relation to heritage protection and conservation. And finally, I'll highlight some of the applicable strategy for Bangladesh before concluding my presentation. I would like to start my presentation with a quotation from Nelson Mandela, quote, "Our rich and varied cultural heritage has a profound power to help build our nation." So now, what is heritage? So heritage is a country's identity. Heritage reflects a country's uniqueness, originality, through historic buildings and unique living landscape. It's a legacy that we inherit from our past generation, use and maintain in the present generation, and pass it to the future generation in the form of tangible artifacts and intangible attributes. Heritage is a vast area, mainly involves 2 sectors, cultural heritage and natural heritage. Again, within cultural heritage, we have tangible heritage such as buildings, monuments, books, landscape artifacts, and also intangible heritage such as oral traditions, performing arts, social practice, ritual, festive events, knowledge, tradition, language, and so on. In many countries like Australia, cultural heritage also include indigenous heritage and underwater cultural heritage. Now, why we need to protect heritage? Because it tells us the story, tells us stories of our past, provides us a sense of identity and continuity to be used by us, for our children, their children, and so on. What is heritage protection? Heritage protection means to conserve. Conserve what? Conserve the values or cultural significance of a particular historic place and building. Conservation is all about wise use of heritage resources to cater for the current generation and also allow benefits for future generation. Conservation means all the process of looking after a place so as to retain its cultural significance. Given we have different speakers tonight to talk on different sides and issues with heritage, I like to focus on built heritage, one of the tangible part of cultural heritage, and will share my practical knowledge and experience in Australia. So how the heritage values are protected in Australia? So in Australia, heritage is conserved and managed under 4 levels of government: local, state, national, and world levels. Currently, I'm involved with national heritage. So heritage values are protected and conserved in Australia through the first step is to identification of values of a particular place and building, and through extensive assessment and background research on its history, its significance, the basic approach of finding why it is significant to the country, people, and the community. So the values of the place are assessed against cultural significance criteria, like historic, rarity, and research and scientific values, aesthetic value of a place, characteristics value of a place, technical values of a place, social values, and the significant values, and also sometimes in Australia, it's indigenous values as well. So in Australia, they have, they also include national heritage list of place. So national heritage list of place that satisfies one or more of the criteria. So if it satisfied one or more of criteria, it is included in the National Heritage List. So in Australia, anybody in the community or organization can nominate a place for heritage listing to the minister who has heritage under his or her portfolio. Like here it is under the Minister for the Environment. Now, community consultation is a huge part in here and very important in every step of national heritage listing. Legislative framework is another part to manage and protect the heritage. So in Australia, there is a strong legislative process in place to protect and conserve the listed values. Heritage listed places are protected and managed under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, shortly it's called EPBC Act. We also have a heritage advisory body called the Australian Heritage Council, which made up of with a group of heritage experts who advise the minister on heritage listing and other heritage matters. However, the minister is the ultimate authority to approve any national heritage listing. Also, we have a heritage database. So when the heritage is listed, so it says statutory listing at the end. So when it is listed, it is included in the database. It's called Australian Heritage Database, and it's on the website. Anybody can have the access to see about the place, what are the values, and why it is listed. So it's mostly community friendly database, so anybody can see and talk about it. Once a place in the National Heritage List, what happens then? The listed place is managed under the EPBC Act, so that the values are protected and maintained. Also, there are management plans with policies for each listed place. People are permitted to do changes to the listed building or places like extension, part demolition, or other internal changes as long as the change does not impact on significant values. So a national listing means the listing is based on values. So what is the values? If you do some changes to the place, if it doesn't impact on values, it should be okay. So values are very important and it is determined when you are listing a place or a building. Any change to heritage place building needs government approval under the EPBC Act. So in here, owners of the heritage building can get funds for their works as incentive from the government. Also here, people celebrate heritage, like through Heritage Week, community event to celebrate festivals. So we also use the Bara Charter, an e-commerce charter adopted in Australia, which defines the basic principles and procedure to be followed in the conservation of Australian heritage places. The Bara Charter approach for conservation is changing as much as necessary, but as little as possible. So in the context of Bangladesh, where we can learn from other countries' practices, like we can take good examples and processes of how the building heritage are conserved and protected, and what is practically applicable to Bangladesh as a developing country. Know the existing status and gaps, heritage listing, what is the statutory legislation in place, authority involved. So step back and think what we can actively do from the start to protect our heritage from our country. Three basic important components needed to be considered, I think, is build public awareness. That is very important and important in everywhere. So it's a marketing and community consultation. These are very important to let the community know that they are part of it and it is their legacy they need to protect. And also law enforcement, like legislative framework for the protection of heritage and the authority involved in it. And there is also a strong advisory panel, like with a group of relevant experts who can advise on a particular thing. Now, what are the benefits we can get from heritage conservation? Heritage conservation is also part of a sustainable development, economic growth, environmental protection, and social benefits, while improving the quality of human life as they are living with natural and cultural environment. Conservation of existing cultural as well as natural heritage reduces environmental impacts by contributing to energy conservation and also reduces carbon emissions by minimizing demolition and construction waste and the need for production and transportation of new materials. contribute towards maintaining a community sense of place in a rapidly changing world. Continuing use of traditional skills and practice, many of which have low environmental impacts. Heritage buildings often contain durable materials that are no longer able to be sustainably sourced and or are very rare, like as for example, marbles and granites and rainforest timbers. So this increasingly rare material can have a long lifespan if we maintain. Now, in the conclusion, I can say heritage is not a static thing, that we have to freeze it in time. It will change over time and use, but these changes should be sympathetic and beneficial to the owner, community, and the country that we all should be proud of. Adaptive reuse of a heritage building makes the building more sustainable, rather keeping them in a state of disrepair. It is highly desirable that heritage site retains the significance through continuing to be valuable and useful in the urban landscape. Now, climate change is real globally, so we have to look into green energy and natural solution in a living environment, including heritage. Thank you.
Thank you, Architect Nigar. We surely learned a lot from you about the current practice in Australia and in the Australian government, and you argued successfully about to incorporate community in keeping the heritage alive, and surely we will learn from you more in future. Thank you again. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Mizanur Rashid. Dr. Mizanur Rashid is a senior lecturer at Deakin University in Melbourne. As an architect academician, he focuses exclusively on pluralistic, both tangible and intangible aspects of architecture and its narratives, tradition and sustainability, and digital design. In last 17 years, he has worked as an active academic in different schools of architecture in different parts of the world, including Australia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, and Singapore. Mizanur obtained his first professional degree in architecture from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology in 1997. Afterwards, in 1999, he completed his Masters of Architecture from KU Leuven, Catholic University in Leuven. In 2008, he obtained a PhD from National University of Singapore. Today, Dr. Mizanur Rashid will argue about the architectural heritage in its collective memory sits intrinsically at intersection of multiple narratives as palimpsests. In reality, this phenomenon becomes more complicated, questioning what is borrowed, authentic, and reconstituted as identity or heritage through time and space. This short presentation argues for the need of recentering our position to interpret the past. It will raise questions about gaps or histories untold, as well as necessitate the need to examine the relation between tradition, memories, and heritage, shared architectural narratives to counter the apparently myopic but persistent representation of heritage as object of antiquity. Dr. Mizanur.
Thank you, Shomik, for as well as the other panel members to give me the floor and for your attention. So unlike the previous two presenters, I'm not really talking about heritage management practice or contemporary heritage thinking. Rather, I will raise some questions that I confronted in my last 2 decades of learning journey as an architect academician in different parts of the world, while I was involved in different other projects. So if you kindly allow me, I'd like to share the screen. I mean, it makes me comfortable to talk when there's something going on in the screen. So can I share my screen now? I hope that you can see, I mean, if the moderator can give me some kind of, okay, so I will start from here.
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. So I'd like to start my presentation with a very personal anecdotal experience. In 2015, actually, I moved to Adelaide to work in a research project as a senior research fellow at Adelaide University. And I was kind of, it's my habit to move around the city to explore something new in the new city. So one day I was just walking around the city center by foot and kind of just confronted with a very interesting poster that you can see in the image. This poster was actually of a dark mustached guy with a red turban. And the question that immediately struck in my mind is actually the title of the poster, which is Aussie. And I assume that all of you can guess that why these titles immediately struck in my mind. So I'm not going to the detail. So when I come back to my campus and I started doing some research on this and study, and I was kind of found that this poster is actually a part of a work of an Adelaide-born artist called Peter Drew. It's a series of works. And these works, it normally depicts a poster-sized reproduction of image from old identity card, photos of men and women, and they're proudly clad in their ethnic dresses and apparently from distant places and times compared to Australian context. So these peoples, these men and women are actually, in fact, are the little known individuals of non-European origin, whose contribution in the economic, cultural, and social development in Australia in the late 19th and early 20th century have rarely been acknowledged and recognized in the mainstream historical discourse. So what Peter Drew has done, he used the term Aussie as a slogan in this series of work, which is indeed a very thought-provoking, and it immediately pricks the collective social conscience. As the term Aussie in generally or colloquially referred to the Anglo-Celtic origin of Australia and its people. So it is something very interesting to think about. So even though Australia is a country that has a very strong heritage structure, as you have seen from the previous presentation, and very strong kind of tradition of preserving and conserving monuments and sites of natural and man-made heritage, it protects sites and monuments like Uluru, Sydney, Opera House, and many others in different regional towns, including Geelong, where I work in. So, but to some extent, these posters and these provoking thoughts actually questions that whether these monuments are really considered as an object of remote past or something that actually fail to share or include the memories and narrative from a holistic perspective. And sometimes these memories and narrative are in a way contested or counter each other. For example, in the poster, we can see this, the narrative or the memoir of this guy, Monga Khan, who is actually the main protagonist in the first image that I have shared with you, was basically an Afghan cameleer who eventually take part actually in carrying golds from Kalgoorlie to the nearest coastal town. So Coolgardie to the nearest coastal towns. So this absence of these memories or narratives, I mean, is sometimes very much important when you are talking about the heritage. And I think Philip has already mentioned about this, that heritage always changing, identities are always changing, and narratives are always changing. It's not something, and architect Nigar has highlighted that it's not something static, it's always changing. So every time the heritage meaning associated narrative is always changing. And most importantly, in the bigger instances, sometimes we see the way, especially in the case of Australia, because I've been here for a long time, the Australia Day is celebrated and commemorated. You know, sometimes this is kind of an overwhelmingly counter the first Australian narrative of the event. So there is always a presence of a counter narrative or a contesting narrative that should be included. And similar things, I think that if we, their audience from Bangladesh and practitioners, and we can see that similar things to ponder upon in the way that we set a standard for a Bengali culture, quote unquote, or associated values. So, for example, that celebrating Bengali New Year on the first day of Boishak is not necessarily a historically Bengali New Year. We know that that is not the practice for thousands of years in the Gangetic Valley by the peasants and farmers. The original Bengali New Year is actually started in the month of Agrahayan, and this is the time of harvesting, all other things. The date that we have at the celebration that we kind of celebrate is actually very much kind of a very modern interpretation of the New Year, which is based on the Emperor Akbar's standardization of this Bengali calendar, mainly for tax purpose, a political decision, or rather administrative decision. So the question I'm asking here or raising is not a validity of a norm or practice that we are doing at this moment. I'm not asking that whether we should do or not, or things like this. The concern is more at whether we are imposing an exclusively urban and predominantly Dhakaite culture to the rest of the country folk by celebrating this kind of activities or kind of labeling them as our heritage. So I'm not asking or giving you any answer, just a question for the open floor to think about. So in reality, how many of us really include the values or share the memories with the people and practices in the periphery of the country, different parts of the country, including the Adivashis and the indigenous people who are in this land? We have to ask ourselves this question. Do the architecture remain and fragments like Nagarpur or other minority communities, buildings and other things, are they really included in our shared worldview as a Bengali Muslim kind of part of this Bengali Muslim society? Or they are just an object of past, just to commemorate and just to keep a record of this? So by us, I am meaning the mass population of Bengal, not only us. And I'm also keeping the question open again for discussion in the panel or for the others. So I always prefer to refer from my personal experience, as you know. Then I just, again, I'm saying that the question that I pose is not concerning the issue of authenticity or originality of the historic facts in a way. Rather, my concern is whether we are inclusive enough to acknowledge the osmotic process of heritage creation, and that absorbs, shares, borrow, and reconstitute a narrative through time. And here is an example from Vietnam. You know that banh mi, the food of Vietnam, which is a very popular street food in Vietnam, which originated from the French delicacy of baguette, which is so far away in Europe. There are associated memories of famine and a shortage of rice during the French occupation in Vietnam that eventually led the people to take baguette as one of the staple food. But at the same time, it is also true and authentic that it slowly absorbed with the Vietnamese culture and eventually interpreted in the Vietnamese street food, which is very popular, and eventually which actually at this moment, if you go anywhere in Australia, anywhere, any marketplaces, any shops, you can say there is a banh mi shop, which is known as the Vietnamese food, but which originally traveled from from a distant place somewhere in Europe. So we have to think about this idea of our set standard of being authentic, and particularly in a culture like Vietnam, where bread becomes a street food, which we know that predominantly the culture is basically a rice culture. So something to think about and ponder upon. So I might go with some more examples with food, because I'm a kind of food connoisseur or food lover. So, but anyway, food is also a living heritage and also a cultural heritage or intangible heritage, whatever you say. So I said I'm not a theorist, but more about sharing my experience and my question and queries with you in this brief presentation. So another example of food from Southeast Asia, and I think that most we have traveled Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, you are familiar with this food called laksa, or even in Bangladesh, you can get this. Australia, it is a very common food, a laksa. So what I confronted when I first moved to Southeast Asia, and I worked and traveled in Singapore, in Malaysia, different parts of Indonesia, different parts of Malaysia, including the island Malaysia, you know, Sabah and Sarawak. And everywhere I went, they said that our laksa is the most authentic and original. The others are actually fake. They adapted from us. So this is the kind of claim which is very intriguing and which kind of associated with this cultural boundedness of being the most authentic. So a place and the food, and we are the most authentic. So this is something to think about, that how eventually there are different heritage layers or shared thing overlaps, and this so-called political boundary of a place or the map that we know is actually a very vague kind of construct, because it's just a political construct. There's no, if you refer to a country or place, it's very much political than a realistic construct. So you have to think about this thing. So we actually do not know that which one is the original or which one is the derivative. And we don't want to question this. The question, or that the concern that I am more worried about or concerned about, is that do we really have a framework that could include all of this version of authentic food? Do we have the inclusive framework that actually cater all this kind of heritage narrative together, the contesting narrative, the counter narrative, and the existing. So without denying anybody as non-heritage. So this is some a big question. And as architect Nigareza mentioned, and also Philip mentioned, this heritage work in a layered way. There are lots of layers, lots of colors this work on. So I don't want to really reiterate the same thing. But what I'm concerned is that the past is not something remote or something at a distance. The past is actually part of our presence at this moment, you know, and Shamik Wise mentioned very interestingly at the beginning of the session is that every moment that you are going through is actually becoming a memory and past. So we are concerning, my concern is more about memory, and please don't take it as memory and history, or memory and past as complementary, you know. So it's not one as interchangeable. So they are two different things. So I think that maybe we need to investigate further, especially when we talk heritage, not as an object, but heritage as a narrative of our worldview. So it's not one object, it's a narrative of multiple objects and multiple things, and it should be a part of our worldview. And it is centered actually on the understanding of our experience as human beings, our memories, ritual, and social history, and eventually it shaped the identity of a cultural practice of a place. So the identity is based on these layered values, and the more layer actually comes up on the identity will shift and reshape through time. So this is acceptable. We have to accept these changes of identity. It's not something frozen in the past, and we have to keep it as it is. So there are some questions regarding this. Most importantly, the architectural heritage, and I think that most of us are more interested in this because we are all from the similar background. The architectural heritage sits intrinsically at the intersection of multiple narratives as layers, and hence we need to kind of carefully discern each of the layers to understand what is borrowed, what is authentic, and what is reconstituted as an identity of this architecture or heritage through time and space. So this is kind of a theoretical discussion on this question that I raised. So most importantly, that I think is that this presentation, as Sumik mentioned, that we want to argue, or I want to argue for the need of a new theoretical framework, new kind of look into this problem, and a need kind of position to interpret the past. So we have to think about how we should look into the past. Is it a past or a heritage object is an object of the past or antiquity, or is it a continuous process? The past is still part of the present. Is it still existing? So rather than keeping the heritage as past or antiquity, the new framework should raise question about gaps or histories untold. You know, it should necessitate the need to examine the relationship between tradition, memories, the question of authenticity, and the shared narrative. In our case, maybe architectural. And it can, only then it can counter the so-called narrowed or myopic view or persistent representation of heritage just as an object of antiquity that is our main concern. And unfortunately, because of this, after 50 years of liberation of independence, our architects have to come to the street to save the buildings like TSC and Komlapur railway station. And unless we have this theoretical framework, unless we bring this, the idea of heritage into the broader context that can connect the present and the past, unless we brought this new lens to see the past through the lens of this new framework, it will happen again and again and again in future. So that's all from my side. And I'd like to thank you all for your time and attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mijan. That was a very interesting and intriguing discussion about, and which actually sometimes question the core of understanding, basically. Thank you again. Our next speaker is Dr. Sajid bin Doja. Before going to Sajid, I just want to reiterate that Sajjad will collect all the questionnaires and come back with them in the summary after the sessions from Facebook, YouTube, and emails. You can still send your send your questions during the presentation and by emailing at myquestion2020@gmail.com. I also like to thank, and I forgot to mention that before, thank our repertoires who are helping us from Behind the scenes, Saif Sadikul from Brack University and Pratasha Paul from Shah Jalal University. Both of them are architecture students and contributors to Context BD. Hello to both of them. Now back to Sajid's topic today. Sajid will focus on the diminishing heritage values of the cities, which causes impact on human intellect. While the city is multi-part of its inherent traditional and historic manners, with the rapid pace of urbanization, cities in Southeast Asia are losing its rooted cultural heritage. The consequences of its trailing inhabitants or the city dwellers are disappearing their memories and images from their local. The research deeply focuses on a particular historic city, Rajshahi, the northern part of Bangladesh, where the historic morphology of the town has disgraced the values of heritage in a short period of time. Now for Sajid's introduction, Sajid is the associate professor and head of the department in architecture at State University of Bangladesh. Dr. Sajid has a keen interest in heritage studies and cultural distinctiveness. His artistic brilliance in painting, cartooning, and clay modeling got him to win him several awards at home and abroad. Dr. Sajid organized 8 solo exhibitions at home and abroad, showing his sketches and drawings on the cultural heritages of Bangladesh. He organizes the Architectural Heritage Tour twice a year for the art history enthusiasts and students in Bangladesh. He is also an Assistant General Secretary on the 24th Executive Council at the Institute of Architects, Bangladesh. He was the past Secretary of Heritage and Culture at the same institute. And he is a collaborator of Unesco Chair of University of Avora. Sajid received his PhD in History of Art and Heritage Studies at the same university in 2016. Back to you, Sajid.
Thank you, Shomik. I'm going to share a couple of slides for I think all we can see. So am I loud and clear, Shomik?
Yes, you can speak up a little bit. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I must. I really feel honored to be a part of this beautiful event. So this is all about a discussion and a kind of awareness building that I'm trying to show, and I'm trying to basically discuss all of with you about a city. We're talking about basically the Southeast Asian city, but particularly I will be more focused on our country, the traditional town or the area. Those cities or those areas are very much getting dilapidated because of the negligence of the administration or kind of authority. So first of all, I want to focus on the diminishing heritage values of the cities, which causes impact on the human intellect. This would be the focused area. Whilst is a city is all about multi-part of its inherent tradition and historic manners. All we know about this. The Southeast Asia is losing its heritage, losing its cultural heritage roots, and what consequences happens? The consequences happens with the inhabitants or the city dwellers. They're disappearing their memories and image of their own locale. I must go to the direct part of the focus area. I think most of us are well known about our traditional town or cities. which is basically composed with certain patterns. The city or the town used to have a water body which was surrounded by community. At the same time, lots of sequential spaces were added in the organic cities of our country, like commercial hub, urban gathering place, courtyard house is the intimate area where this sequence actually starts. The community activities, both way interactions. Dharma Shobha means the basically I'm talking about the I'm talking about the religious spaces. So you can see here that the pattern are almost same in our country. The traditional historic city, if we call this a traditional historic city, they all have a very archetypal pattern, which basically comments the city environments and artistic sequences, local or mental mapping of the area, interactive communities evolved basically through this way, presence of harmonious community, socially and culturally integrated mass. So now, which is basically extinct. We can see this kind of pattern of the city because, as we know, this rapid pace of urbanization um, uh, and the unplanned planning to secure the cultural heritage is missing in the authority by the authority or by the infrastructural development policy. So this was a very common phenomena for the traditional town, or as we can talk, the historic city of our country, um, all over our country. Uh, Sequence of realm, as we know, that stating from the courtyard to the common places, or starting from the courtyard to the sequence of spaces, the people had a very different experience to share, to interact, or to have a gathering with others. But I am afraid to say that the new city or the realm of new city we are going to prepare or we are going to propose for the new development, which is missing. This kind of sequence we always we see. This is the missing part is there. Eventually, the socialization space, as we call, because of this water body, it has a great role for those traditional area. Those water body actually perhaps helped the community and the inhabitant to come here and to have their daily activities um, wholeheartedly, and they used to interact each other in this area, so that they had a very lively neighborhood interaction in that time. But we can see right now, moment, this kind of activities and spatial arrangement. So what we're getting right now, we're getting basically we can't find in historical cityscape. This is from the very quick sketchpad activities that historic city, if we, the historic city or the traditional city had the intangible and tangible matter, which was basically vice versa. So somehow both of these meaning and the matters are completely absent nowadays when we're demolishing in our cultural heritage or cultural values of our cities. This is the main problem, basically, what we're doing right now. We're getting away from this organic development or kind of um, uh, very organic sequences, which completely getting faded, and we're adapting a very pattern of gridiron or kind of these things, which doesn't have our memories, which actually cannot rebuild our nostalgic part or the memories and the other part of the cities, which always make us the image or the mental mapping to prolong it with further. So this is, I think, the vital part, how we are switching on from here to there. So these consequences basically, it has a very different kind of impact on the human intellect. We can explain like that way. The nation or the community grow up with unauthentic cultural practice, no connection with predecessors, fame and faith, knowledge gap, living heritage is disappearing without continuing traditional values, livelihood is disrupting, disintegrated community participation, isolated livelihood. Uh, so this is very much alarming for the inhabitant of the city, which we're now basically proposing or getting towards. It doesn't make sense that the predecessors or our heritage values will be continued with hand to hand with the human intellect or kind of mind or mankind or something like that. Very uh, uh, disappearing. I mean, this is the disappearing photos I want to show you. That how basically, if you see the left column photos, you can see the city had image or city has a heritage chain uh, to identify, to promote, or to dignify. And the right side of this, the same city, after 15 or 12 years back, and nowadays the city has this kind of uh, pictographic information. At the same time, the the image, we can say, I can say this is the image, I can say this is a very mundane scene of a city. So this is how the development authorities are thinking about the cities, and very well-known and very reputed historical structures has been vanished and demolished because of this kind of very development. I must say two things here, because how cities' heritage values cause impact on human intellect. Perhaps uh, the cultural heritage or the heritage values promotes the historical range and human thoughts, how historical substance can influence inhabitants, historical belongings arises sensitivity to pursue cultural longing, cities inhabitants connect and continue with socio-cultural legitimacy, contains with knowledge and evolves with sharing capacity, well informed about his or her cities. Last of all, I must say, to enrich future generation with culture and creative initiatives. So this is one point. I mean, under these key points, and another point we must consider to remain retain the heritage values of the cities is the intangible and the tangible matter. So intangible and tangible matter basically consists with the place, activities, significance, oneness, participation of masses, living heritage, continuation of legacy. So these are very, these two points are very important to me. I think this is not to me, it is very much important for to preserve or to remain retain the cultural heritage as it is, or to promote a city. So we have to share and we have to acknowledge these several points. Otherwise, actually, it's very difficult to continue with very much valued causes which have a very good impact on the human intellect. So if we can't do this, if we can't continue to be a part of these heritage values, if we can't assure to rebuild the new cities, or if we can't put these intangible and tangible matters remain written as it is to new cities, that will be a very difficult thing. And what will actually get that time, we have to find a destination and epitaph, and we have to say, rest in peace, on the traditional historic cities. Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Sajid, for sharing your insights about your hometown and all the knowledge. I wish I was your student at some point. Thank you for those nice sketches in the presentation and sharing with us all. I'm sure everybody appreciates that. Our next speaker is very synonymous to architectural history and heritage conservation in Bangladesh. Professor Abu Said Ahmed. His main interest, as I just told, his main interest in architectural history and conservation, and he has been in the Department of Architecture in the University of Asia Pacific since its inception in 1997 till today. He received his PhD in 1997 in the Institute of Building History, Faculty of Architecture of University Karlsruhe in Germany. He has been carrying a lot of responsibilities nationally and internationally. I'll just tell you only a few. He was the president of Institute of Architect IAB from 2013 till 2016. He is the chairman of Bangladesh Architectural Education and Accreditation Board at the Institute of Architects and fellow member of Bangladesh Itihash Porishad. He is also an elected president or was the elected president of Arcasia 21-22, an organization of 22 Asian countries. He is a member of Union of International Architects Region 6, which is Asia and Oceania, under Heritage Working Committee. He is an advisor to the Department of Archaeology for the ratification project of the restored grandfather's building of Honorable Prime Minister at Tungipara, done by the Department of Archaeology. He is a member of editorial board of Antiquity Act 2016 under Ministry of Home Affairs, Government of Bangladesh. Today, he will focus mainly on the challenges of conservation practices in Bangladesh and share his experience. And I thank him for coming to today's webinar despite his very busy time. And I understand he has to move to another meeting before we go to session 3. Thank you, Dr. Abu Said. Please, over to you.
Thanks, Ramesh. Actually, at first, I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to the organizer, Context PD, and the Bangladeshi architect in Australia for selecting such a heritage-related topics, which is very pertinent or appropriate, or I should say timely, for a country like Bangladesh, when we are moving forward or steps in the category of a developing country or middle income category, in the category of middle income category. Most of the developed countries have been able to preserve their own culture, architecture, and urban heritage. But the rest of the world, either developing or underdeveloped countries, has not done that. Culturally devoid, barren, completely. Dubai, Doha, Muscat, Riyadh are the worst example where no architectural heritage left. Everybody is imitating Western form of building. So this is the right time to speak loudly that conservation is not against the development of a country. Rather, it will supplement the development. Our GDP in Bangladesh will be increased by conserving our cultural heritages. This conservation can promote also cultural tourism that fulfills one of the sustainable goal, development goal, SDG. This is the right time. That's why I'd like to thank the organizer again. Now, I'd like to share the challenges of conservation practice in Bangladesh, as I am actively involved in conservation practice here. 1 or 2 decades ago, the challenges of heritage conservation practice had identified in such a way that we have lack of financial incentive, lack of resources, lack of legislation, lack of policies, lack of priorities, lack of awareness, and such and so on and so on. However, at present, many public and private institutions have come up to preserve many heritage buildings around the country. After our involvement in many conservation projects, we are facing several new challenges. Challenges varies from monuments to monuments, locality to locality, context to context. Today, I'd like to mention only few challenges which are common for all sites, all restored sites. And I'll emphasize only three challenges. One is lack of research, and we have to identify. The second one is the skilled manpower, which is scattered around the country. And lastly, scarcity of traditional method or material used in conservation. So number one is the lack of research or knowledge on architectural history of Bengal architecture, or the knowledge on ancient construction techniques and method. We need a lot of research. As I'm the pioneer or in this authentic conservation practice, I do not have any role model, or I do not have any established knowledge of conservation or conservation practice here. So we have to undertake a thorough research before each and every intervention. We do not know about the bonding system of Buddhist architecture, Sultanate architecture, Mughal architecture, even the colonial architecture. We don't know about the finished material, surface finished material, even the mortaring system, how thick the mortar, what is the ingredients of the mortar or the material used in that ancient monuments. We don't know about the door and window used in the ancient monument. Nobody knows how the door and windows look like in Buddhist viharas or in Mughal structures. Maybe some people might know, but there is no publication on these techniques or the attributes or the elements. We have to rely only on some chronicles only. So I want to inform you all in this aspect by taking full responsibility. The 99% wall surface in the Buddhist vihara like Paharpur, Mohastangad, because Mizanur Rashid knows Paharpur very well. Even the Sultanate mosques, Shat Gambud, the most of the mosques, Mughal, are new, not original. My question is it an authentic restoration? Removed all original bricks from the surfaces and cladded with new bricks, with new bonding system. Even the bonding of the masonry bonding system and the brick size of all Buddhist monuments in Bangladesh, all Islamic architecture, Sultanate period, even the Hindu temples are same, exact similar bonding. Even the brick size are also similar. How it happens? Probably John Marshall from British or someone established a conservation code and everyone has followed this one. So we don't know our deconstruction technique. So we need a lot of research. But what we can do, so thorough, during our conservation, what we are doing, we are learning by doing. And we want to compile our knowledge through this conservation, learning by doing from the craftsmen, from the methods actually. The second one is the scarcity of traditional craftsmen. Second challenge, or not second, this is one of the challenges. We know that conservation is one of the main or most tangible actors. Sorry, we know the craftsman or craftsmanship is one of the main and most tangible actors or drivers to safeguard our cultural properties. It is very challenging to find craftsmen proficient in traditional lime masonry or chimney ornamentation or louvered window techniques today in Bangladesh, since the demand of new construction project with new materials is very high, such as cast iron railing is replaced by stainless steel SS railing. Chimney ornamentation is replaced by aluka bond. Lime terracing used in the roof is replaced by Berger chemical, then how could we find the man behind the traditional crafts if these techniques are going to vanish or not to be practiced? The most interestingly, the craftsman's skill and knowledge about traditional construction technique belong to the craftsmanship that was historically passed on to the generation to generation. This craftsmanship passed from generation to generation. It means each and every craftsman community or craftsman locality is famous for their specialization. For example, brick dressers are coming from Praharpur. Most of the audience are architects. I think nobody heard the term brick dresser. What is this? Brick dresser is in Paharpur. The people in the Paharpur, when we provide one brick and ask them, please make a floral ornamentation out of this brick, they make beautiful ornamentation like the stone carver. They are very skilled. And this group is people called brick dresser. They can dress brick any shape, any form. Skilled brick mason available in the Chapai Nawabganj in the northern part of Bangladesh. Masons from Nator is experienced in intricate decoration work. Even the small children, the beginner, as the craftsman or the worker, he can do good ornamentation work, decoration work when he comes from Nator, from that village. And craftsmen from Nagaon can build dome and arch by bricks. Arcute system, they know very well the arcute system, construction of the arcute system. The skilled Chinnitic artisan of old Dhaka is unparalleled. It is so on. We have a lot of craftsmen villages in our country. Our challenge was to identify these groups of building craftsmen. But after getting them, we are now trying to focus how to improve their livelihood. Otherwise, they will involve in other profession, like rickshaw polar or in other profession. As a result, we cannot hold them. So each and every conservation project is very impactful for them, as they perform a skill building role for the masons and craftsmen. Number one, this conservation project is performed as a skill building role for the masons and craftsmen, and also revival of the original technology, traditional know-how. And lastly, as a result, supports their livelihood also. And the last challenge was regarding the ancient material and their sources of their origin. The traditional building material used in the conservation projects or process are now in the way of the extinction in Bangladesh, mainly wood or timber. Timber was used as floor material. In the staircase, between the riser and tread, in the nosing, they have used timber in Mughal buildings. Supporting of the roof, Kori Borga, or the shuttered window, door window, we have to use wood. We have scarcity of seasoned timber. Due to the riverine shifting, we don't have old trees in Bangladesh. We know Bangladesh is the largest delta. It means the river, due to the riverine shifting, we don't have very old trees that produce seasoned timber. So we had to rely on neighboring countries, mainly Burma, such as for teak or loha wood or iron wood. As loha wood has a lot of crack inside, so shal wood was replaced the loha wood for using or making beams, kori, the long beams in the colonial period. Shal wood or shal cut is very long and straight. We know from Kumilla, Moynamuti, Shalbon, or in Rajendra National Park, we have a lot of shal trees. But at present, there is a restriction on selling shal wood by our Ministry of Forestry, Government of Bangladesh. All windows are exposed to rain, so we need to special water resistant wood. We can use loha wood, but it is very heavy and hard to work. Jarul is suitable for this wood. We are making our boat out of jarul wood. Difficult to procure seasoned jarul. It means Shal and Jarul wood are in the way of extinction in Bangladesh. We have new kind of wood, mahogany and other wood is very popular nowadays. So we have to preserve not only building, we have to preserve the material also. Otherwise, we cannot conserve the cultural remnants. The main one is the second one is the lime. We have three types of lime. Typically, number one is slaked lime produced from the limestone collected from the Sylhet or from Netrokona area. And the second one, important one, is the shell lime collected from the river. Shell lime collected from the river. Number one is slaked lime collected from limestone, and second one is from shell. And the last one is the industrial lime. It is imported, actually, like cement. Nowadays, we can have a lot of industrial lime imported from Vietnam or Thailand, but it is not preferable. It is not our material. So we have to rely upon that two types of lime. Slaked limes are used for mortar. We have abundance of limestone, but have scarcity in the finished material. For mortar or for the joining of the bricks, we have enough lime. But the finished material for the surface finish, we have to use shell lime found in a river or collected from the river. Our environmental ministry gave an embargo to collect shell limes from the river to protect our ecology and biodiversity. Now it is the dilemma to me, either to protect environment or versus authentic conservation. We have to choose. I don't know what will happen. At the end, I should say, we'll overcome all these challenges and constraints through learning by doing approach. Learning from the construction of the ancient monument and also learning from the skilled craftsmen. Learning from the skilled craftsmen. It means we have to compile all these things. If possible, we have to make a mapping of the Bangladesh where we can find the supply chain of all materials, supply chain of the craftsmen. Then the next generation, the future, when someone come to the conservation, they should have the easy access to the craftsmen and the material. This is more important. Thus, I'm try to do research on this. Now I will conclude my with one of a quotation by one of the famous conservationists. The quote: "I think restoring architectural heritage is like a battle, and no matter what we do, there is always more work to do. So I wish and hope our team has to keep themselves moving by doing new projects and new experiments. Thank you all. But at the last, I have a very small video clip, 1.5 minutes. Can I share it? Can we?
Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. With this video, you can see the three things: the techniques, the masons, and the materials. This is the slaked lime. It's prepared for mortar and bonding. And there's the brick dust, the mixing of the brick dust and slaked lime. And we have to wait for 7 days. And for bonding material, we have to find local ingredients, betel nut, juice of betel nuts. And this is a rab. Rab is a molasses. This mortar is used for plaster. And they have to hammer the plaster or settle down.
and then we have to leave this plaster for at least 1 and 2 months for making the finish. This is the finished material. And here we have to use the shell lime, very fine lime actually. And we have to use the rab, actually rab, the molasses boor in Bengali here. And the surface preparation for the finishing work. Thank you all.
Thank you, Professor Said Ahmed. We learned very hands-on from you since you are in the practice for a long time, and it was really enlightening for us all. Thank you very much for your time today. I'm sure we will learn more in future from you. Thank you. We'll now move to our next speaker. It's a slight deviation from our original program as our speakers needs to attend another meeting, and I intentionally skipped him before this. He has been so much vocal for all the other heritage related webinars. Is our one and only Dr. Adnan Morshed. He is an architectural historian and academic focused in history theory of modern architecture and urbanism, who's been with Catholic University of America in Washington DC, joined us from Washington, and amongst his books, DSC Dhaka through 25 buildings, Oculus, a decade of insights into Bangladesh affairs in 2012, and many of other books, just to mention. And he was also in 2018 TEDx Forgotten speaker at the Georgetown University, and and his recent design work includes 8 BRAC regional offices across Bangladesh, and he is also serving as a reviewer in various national and international refereed journal architectural competitions, and has been cited widely in various professional and news network, including the New York Times, Asia News Network, and he's a regular columnist for the Daily Star and Prothomalo. He's also a founder director of the Center of the Inclusive Architecture and Urbanism at BRAC University, Dhaka. Today he will talk to us about the global the method of practice and approaches in the global context, both tangible and intangible, especially in the US, UK, and other neighboring countries, the heritage conservation frameworks, policies and tools, and challenges of preservation. Over to you, Adnan, Professor Adnan Morshed.
Good morning, and good, we are in very different geographic regions, so I have to say best wishes to everybody. Yeah. So everything has been said. I don't know what else to highlight. So Samik, I can perhaps finish in 1 minute. But let me share some of my thoughts based on what I have seen or understood in the wake of the conversation that was going on since the specter of demolition of TSC and Kamalapur railway station. So I'm going to very to the point. So I will share 3-4 ideas. Number one, I think as Dr. Mizanur Rashid and Dr. Abu Said said, that knowledge production has to be key, not about history, but it is not very an easy project. How do we produce knowledge? So it has to operate at 2 levels. Number one is that we have to decolonize knowledge production. We have to, as Dr. Mizanur Rashid very eloquently said, that we have to understand the multiplicity, the multiple narrative, multiple specialities, multiple sort of multiplicity of knowledge. We have to consider that. For example, if you think about Buddhist architecture in Bangladesh or Bengal, we will have to see how Buddhism evolved in this region. We have to see variety of, in other words, we have to understand the global history of Buddhism as it unfolded in our region. And of course, that's not a monolithic narrative. We have to understand it in its contradictions and complexities. Think about, in Australia, I know, many of you are in Australia. How is the history of Aborigines incorporated in mainstream Australian, let's say, primary school education? And I'm sure it's a kind of oftentimes it suffers from invisibility. And it's same in America. The history of slave trading is not part of the mainstream American education. The history of Native Americans are almost non-existent. So we have to decolonize knowledge production. We have to internalize knowledge production. Think about, and most of you are in BUET graduate. Think about when you are an undergraduate or in other places, we studied Bannister Fletcher as our main history book. It is essentially the book is based on historiographic model of the 19th century, in which West is at the center, the rest is kind of sort of inconsequential branches. So how do we kind of decolonize knowledge and internalize all kinds of narratives? One, so that's one stage of the knowledge production. The other is what Dr. Abu Said said, that you also have to bring knowledge or internalize knowledge of on the ground, the craftsmanship, the materiality, the craftsmanship, materiality. For example, trees. How do you kind of think about woodwork in traditional architecture of Bengal? So knowledge production has to be at a very epistemological level. On another level, it has to incorporate the materiality of it. Another challenge I understood or I observed is that in Bangladesh, we have a fundamental gap in coalition building. Think about it. When the trees in front of TSC were cut, virtually there was no protest, no op-eds in newspapers. Prothom Alo, which is one of the leading newspapers in Bangladesh, was rather slow to pick up the issue. So why does it happen? It happens because we architects and professionals in building profession, perhaps we also do self-critique. We have not been able to make it a robust public conversation. We need to bring our knowledge to the public forum. So we have to do our part rather than blame others. So the multidisciplinarity of the project of preservation, historic preservation, need to be brought into the public arena for robust political and public debate. So that needs to happen. Coalition building. I organized multiple webinars in which I invited economists, journalists, and sociologists to public, other lawyers. Rizwana Hassan, one of the leading environmental lawyers in the country, the president of BELA, Bangladesh Environmental Lawyers Association, I invited her to talk about the legality of historic preservation. So the legal side of historic preservation must be strengthened. Otherwise, architects alone, by screaming and shouting and playing placard in Shahbag, won't do it. So the institutionality of the project of preservation must be a part of coalition building. As you know, in Australia, how institutions work. Both private and state actors work in concert to make it a viable project. In America, in my city, in Washington, D.C., we have Commission of Fine Arts. Let's say in a historic district, you want to build something, you want to build a community center. You have to go through a process. You have to show what you are replacing, and also the environmental impact of your project must go through a process and must be approved. So there are institutionalities of historic preservation that we have to, in Bangladesh, we have to strengthen. We have to learn from other countries. That's why it is very important coalition building, not nationally, but also internationally. Bring in Unesco, bring in how other countries are dealing with historic preservation. India is going through a similar processes of turmoil. As you know, in 2018, Hall of Nations by Raj Riwal was demolished, despite despite protests across India and around the world. As you know, the IIM, Indian Institute of Management, designed by Louis Kahn, was 14 dormitories of IIM were about to be demolished last year. The whole world, the Kahn scholars, Louis Kahn enthusiast architects from around the world wrote to the director of IIM, and eventually IIM, facing enormous pressure from around the world, had to withdraw their proposal to demolish these buildings. So how did it happen? Coalition building, very important. My number 3 point is, unless we incorporate historic preservation with economics, it's not going to work. So economic integration is key. Think about Ruplal House in Old Dhaka. Ruplal House has been languishing for many years. Why is it not being preserved? Why is it not being protected? On many levels. First of all, the ownership is very fuzzy. Who owns the project? Surprisingly, do you know who owns Ruplal House or who controls Ruplal House now? Army, Bangladesh Army. Actually, surprisingly, so ownership is very fuzzy. Now think about it. If Ruplal House has been co-opted, preserved, historically preserved, co-opted within an economic program of adaptive reuse, let's say it becomes a boutique hotel, like in Morocco. If you go to Marrakesh, you will see that all these historic buildings are preserved as boutique hotels. I stayed in one, and I'm sure many of you have experienced similar experiences in other places. So unless historic preservation is part of an economic program, adaptive reuse or other programs, it has to be infused with some economic incentives. I will give you an example. In Chittagong, that is the tallest building in Chittagong is P.K. Shen building in old part of Chittagong. With one of the planners of CDA, Chittagong Development Authority, and I went together to talk to the owner, or rather owners. The owner said, please just take it over. Give us an economic incentive. We are poor. This is our only property. Unless we generate income, no matter how your historic preservation, how fancy your preservation project is, it doesn't matter. Because this is our only source of livelihood. Unless you make that our part of our livelihood, why should we care about historic preservation? It is important for you, but we have to feed our family. We look at these kids. He was crying. He was literally crying. He said that we need to preserve this, but as long as it gives me some money every month. So economic integration is very important. My number 4 point, and I will conclude with that. If you go to Bangladesh today, if you look at very closely at the curriculum, it is still a very outdated curriculum, unless there are some pockets of renovation and reform, curricular reform here and there. But there is no concerted curricular reform that gives students a good sense of the responsibility of historic preservation. There is no knowledge production in, for example, the kind of topics Dr. Mizanur Rashid brought in, Dr. Abu Said brought in. We need to make that part of our education, particularly in the graduate level. We have, at BUET, we have master's program, and I taught in the master's program recently. It is completely outdated. We need to make these kinds of curricular reform an integral part of the experimentation that education allows. If you keep on repeating, perpetuating that same colonial education that was created in the 60s and 70s, it's not going to go anywhere, and architects will scream on the streets, but historic preservation will remain an elitist project. And for example, a minister would say that, no problem, we will preserve Kamalapur railway station, we will move it 30 meters away. So just imagine, okay, Taj Mahal is, has all the dust, and it's blackened by the smoke from the factories. So we'll move the Taj Mahal on the other side of Yamuna. So when our ministers say that we will remove the Kamalapur railway station 30 meters away, it is not the minister's fault entirely. It is also our fault, because we have not been able to bring the cultural, social, historical significance of Kamalapur railway station in the public domain. So we also need to do a lot of self-critique, as well as we need to democratize knowledge production. And unless we do that, it's not going to go anywhere. So I don't want to leave this conversation with a kind of a pessimistic note. But I think the younger generation, young architects or students, are eager to learn. They are eager to face new challenges. The kind of conversation we need to have about decolonizing knowledge production, I think the younger generations are much more receptive to those ideas, and we need to invest in our students. We need to invest in our future generations to embrace new types of challenges and new types of possibilities. Thank you. And before I conclude, I also like to thank Context BD and also Samik and Sajjad and others involved with the Bangladeshi Architects of Australia. You are doing wonderful job I follow your work from time to time. Thank you for organizing this. This is very timely and should be done more frequently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adnan Morshed. I could not believe you have brought all your knowledge, all the various knowledge of all the discussions you had in such a short time. We are very grateful to you, and they are all very much to the point. We wish to hear more from you in future. And now, before we move to our next speaker, we would like to do a little detour in for some slides of historical significance. I introduce you to Hasina Reza Chanchal. He's a historic photographer by hobby, but a mechanical engineer graduated from Bangladesh Engineering and University of Technology. And his passion to travel and take archaeological and anthropological photography in different remote places in country brought him here with us in this event. His work has been shown in different photographic exhibitions in both Bangladesh and other countries. His photographs are regularly published in the daily newspapers in Bangladesh and some internationally. So without further delay, back to Hasina Reza Chanchal. Chanchal, please.
Thank you, Shomit Bhai, and thank you all the speakers, and thank you, Simon, for giving me the opportunity to show you some of my works, some of our site. So today I mainly show you some of that are not very much famous sites, and all of them are chronologically arranged since from Wari Borshar to British Bangladesh, Bangla. So Shomit Bhai, I want to share my screen.
Please.
Thank you. So this is all about the expedition of our some archaeological site here, and in this slideshow I'll show more or less 17 sites in Bangladesh, and most of them are non-famous, and all of them are not included in Department of Archaeology of our country. So here is the list what I will show. It's about me something. Some of my actions of photography. So Wari Borshar, I hope everybody of you know what is Wari Borshar. So still the Wari Borshar, there are 4 sites there, and this is the temple. Its name is Tongitek, and I hope you all know about this. And this one is covered with the roof as due to rain. So it is excavating slowly by slowly. So this is one site, Tongitek, and this is the design of Maurya civilization. Basically, this is a Buddha Bihar. And this is the same year. And this is the sample that was found in Wari Borshar, and all of them are about 450 years BC old. And this is the sample, as a sample museum of Wari Borshar, how it was looks like at the time. And this is another Buddha Bihar. Its name is Poddatek, and it's also still it's doing excavating. And this is site of old Brahmaputra river that's beside, and it's in Belabo Noshindi. It's about 80 kilometers far from Dhaka city. And now moving to Natshat Deol. So Natshat Deol, the approximate time is 780 C to 950 C, though this site was abandoned at 1225 C so far. And this is the picture of excavating this site, and it was being excavated under the supervision of Department of Archaeology of Jahangir University. And I met the person who was the in charge of this excavation, and in front of me, they have excavated a glass bottle. Possibly that was from British time. And this is in Bikrampur basically. Holy Authorities Dipankar also born in this area, somewhere in this area. And this is the picture how it was actually. And these are some sample that was found here. And this is drone picture, but I took this picture from another picture. I didn't took it. And the largest pyramid of Bangladesh also found here. And this pyramid is now covered with some bags, and it will be excavated later maybe. If I am going too fast, please let me know. So I'll be slow at the time.
It's okay.
So next, Ishaka Jungle Boy. So Ishaka Jungle Boy, this is in Kisharganj. Though Ishaka acquired this place, but this place was built. So far I know it's before the Muslim ruler. This place is under the supervision of Department of Archaeology, but this condition of this place is very old, and I see some domestic animal also in both inside and outside of this monument, and I didn't find even a simple proof of preserving these sites. And this is the place where the 14th generation of Ishaka is still living in this place. And this is the bowl, basically the herbal bowl for herbal medication that was used by Ishaka in his lifetime, and the bowl also. Mohammadabad city, this is in Jhinjai district. There are 9 mosques in this, 9 mosques found in this place, and some cemetery also. And most of the mosques are adjacent with a big pond, except Shukur Mullik and Jor Bangla Mosque. And the biggest mosque here is the name is Adina Masjid, and this masjid contains 35 domes. And this is the Adina Masjid, you see. And this is the inside of Adina Masjid. And people from there says, and also Department of Archaeology says, there is a big found over there which was engraved in 746 Hijri. So that's how some people say that it was built in 1300 BC. Sorry. And this is Godar Masjid. So all together here we found 9 mosques. And this is also Godar Masjid. This is Noongola Mosque. And this is also Noongola Mosque. And this is the dome from the inside of the mosque. And this city was built during the Khanjan Ali, and all of this mosque was similar to Baghat 60 Dome Mosque. This is Golakata Mosque, and this is Jor Bangla Mosque, and this is Pit Pukur Mosque. These are some designs of the mosque, exterior design. Now again Chandravati temple. So Chandravati is she born in Kisharganj. This temple was in his father's house, but nowadays still this one is looked after by Department of Archaeology in Bangladesh. And I found an woman who look after this temple, but she didn't allow me to enter inside to take some photos. So I took only the photo from outside. Atia Mosque, next. Atia Mosque is, from my opinion, my point of view, so far in my lifetime, this is one of the most beautiful mosques I have ever seen due to its unique design. This is the oil, and this is the mosque. And you see the design in the mosque wall. And I have never seen this amount of design in a mosque. But in temple, I've seen many, but not even in mosque. Now Karatia Jamindar Bari. Korotia Jamindar Bari, so far I know, is one of the oldest Jamindar Bari in Bangladesh, and I didn't got the permission to enter in their house to take some photos, so I took this photo from the outside, and the mosque, including the graveyard also. And so far the history I know, they have started the Jamindari at 1600 C. And this type of mosque I see in two Jamindar Bari in Tangail. I saw this type of mosque, but this is very similar to the mosque in Mughal structure. This is Hajiganj Fort. Hajiganj Fort, though this is the under supervision of Department of Archaeology, but I didn't find any responsible person over there who is look after this or who is giving the security, nothing else. And moreover, I found some people over there was playing. Some kids were playing, and besides just adjacent to the fort, I found a factory just constructed, and possibly the place belongs to this fort, but they are just acquired this place is illegally. I was not permitted to enter in this factory, and they didn't talk to me eventually about this. And this is in Narayanganj, very close to Dhaka city. Now the Idrakpur Fort. Idrakpur Fort is in Munshiganj, very close to Dhaka. So the condition of Idrakpur Fort is better than Hajiganj Fort because there is a security over there, and I found some people who were looking after this fort. And this is the main dome of this fort. But the problem I found, there are some illegal construction made in the land of this fort, and the people live there. They cultivating some crops also, and moreover, some permanent construction is being constructed at the time just adjacent of the dome of this fort. So within maybe 2 or 3 years later, we won't be able to see the real natural beauty of this fort, and it will be then occupied by different structures. So next, Mir Kadim Bridge. So Mir Kadim Bridge, it is also under the Department of Archaeology in Bangladesh. But no one knows when it was constructed. It was constructed, and the condition of this bridge is not very good. I have seen the trail of dredging pipe just attached with the backside of the bridge. So eventually, the local people doesn't take care of this bridge, and the kids and boys, they normally play in the evening and the afternoon. Then Pakulla Jamindar Bari. Pakulla Jamindar Bari, it was established in 1153 Bengali years, and still now the generation of old Jamindar living in this building, but it was reconstructed at 1400 Bengali year. I have taken all the pictures from the outside, but inside couldn't because the female was there, but no male inside the building at the time. So I was not permitted to enter. And this is the well they normally use, but now this is abandoned. Unknown temple. I have visited this temple 3 times, and last time when I was there, I seen this was just demolishing. Though this building was constant, it is not less than 250 years old, and this is situated in Nawabganj, just on the bank of Isamati River. And I was just amazed seeing the design of this temple, like the snake head. You see the snake head in front of the column, and also the snake head on the top of the man's head. So this design is unique. I have seen many temples, but from my opinion, the design of this temple is unique. Though we should conserve it, but I think nowadays it has already been demolished. But in this temple there is a building together with it, but this one also demolished. This one is another temple just opposite side of the Isamuti, and this is also in Nawabganj. Now the Norail Jamindar Bari. In Norail, we know in Norail city, we know there are two Jamindar. One is Rup Kumar and another is Ratan Kumar. And this is the abandoned temple of Rup Kumar's house. And this is the abandoned Hatbari temple of Ratan Kumar. And all of them are approximate 130 years old, maybe. Del Dior Jamindar Bari. This one is also in Tangail, and this Jamindar Bari is also known as North House. The house is abandoned now. No one lives over there because the people of this the generation of the Jamindar now they are living in Dhaka and no one lives here. It's a private property, but its adjacent mosque, it's same look like the Korota mosque, but considering the Pakulla Jamindar Bari and Korota Jamindar Bari, this Jamindar Bari is relatively newer. Now Mondolbari temple in Munshiganj, there is a Jamindar Bari, the Mondolbari. They have 4 temple over there, and all of these 4 are abandoned. Now they have constructed another big temple which they are using, but these 4 are abandoned right now. Nagarpur Jamindar Bari. So Nagarpur Jamindar Bari, so far I have seen the Jamindar Bari. This one is the biggest, and the whole periphery is on the 54-acre land, and several buildings over there, and 2 big pond, and 3 temples. The government just before 1 year, it was used as the Nagarpur Women College, but now Department of Archaeology has acquired this. But some of the building here already abandoned, and lots of snakes are there. You see the design, and I know you all know the name of the Jamindar was Upendra Mohan Chaudhary, and he was very rich in design and in culture. So far my understanding, seeing all of this design over there. This was the design in his temple. This temple is abandoned right now, and this building is abandoned. This is a temple is also abandoned, and this is a building of abandoned building over there. And this one is a hospital for him. And after the death of his elder son, he built three more hospital over there. This building is full of snakes, and government has closed the front door of this building. So I have used a tunnel to enter inside this building. This is another temple, abandoned temple, and these are the stubble, horse stubble. But now this one is using as a school. This also stubble, and this is the hospital, one hospital building. The same one. This is the second building of hospital, and this is the third one. And this is the third one, and this is a number 1 pond, and another pond is his. In this pond, there is, I think there is 13 ghat over there, and this is the entry of this. This is the entry of this pond. Now Bani Bhavan. Bani Bhavan is a hostel of Jagannath University, but Rajuk now abandoned this, and this is in old Dhaka, Ishwar Chandra Lane most probably. But people is still living over there, though this is abandoned, officially abandoned. And Borobari, it's very near to Ruplal House, just 20 or 30 meters far from Ruplal House. And this is someone called Borobari, someone called 46 Nang House. So the design of this building was very restricted, but the condition of the building is very vulnerable. See the design. So that's all for me today. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, Hasina Reza, Chanchal. Those were, there was a lot of beautiful photographs you have shown us, and before we were very amazed by your passion to go to those places and take those pictures. And I know you can go on many hours and kindly showing us, and thank you for kindly showing us these selected ones. I'm sure we'll see more in future. Thank you. Now we'll move to our next speaker, Humaira Zaman. Sorry that it took us a while to get to you and patiently waiting. But finally we are there. So Humaira Zaman is the head and senior lecturer of Department of Architecture of Bangladesh University. Other than being a practicing architect as a partner at Environments Studio of Architecture, she was one of the founding member of Urban Study Group that started campaign for preservation of Shakari Bazaar, the oldest neighborhood of Puran Dhaka, the old Dhaka. This campaign grew in time, evolved into Save Puran Dhaka, for which she worked as the coordinator. Her activism involved documentation of heritage properties, building awareness through heritage walks, exhibitions, even leading to lawsuits. She had participated in Visitors Leadership Program in 2011 and recently joined Bangladesh University and carrying the responsibility of the head of the department from 2019. Over to you, Humaira Zaman, please.
Thank you, Shomik. I hope you all can hear me. Yes. Greetings to all the speakers. And I think, I am definitely underqualified to talk in such a seminar because I will be talking from my experience in the field. I'm not specialized in conservation or anything. It was more a passion of an architect who felt the need of campaigning for the heritage preservation. Our campaign, if I say, it was a very small group. Me and my then partner, Taimur Islam, and some young architects and students initially started this in 2004, when the government came up with a plan to pull down Shakari Bazaar after a disaster which killed 9 people. And so we thought that, okay, we will campaign for the preservation, or at least could document the oldest neighborhood and protect them. But, we didn't understand that this would take us over into a 24-hour business. And I worked more than 10 years in this campaign. So from my point of view, I will just say all the speakers have crossed most of the problems or the situation. Like Professor Philip has very correctly picturized the situation of a city like Dhaka. What happens when densification happens or the growth of the city is uncontrolled? It's the heritage areas that takes the brunt. So from that side, I will focus on what were the struggles that we faced as a campaigner or an activist, which I think is necessary. If you think about, is the situation same for Dhaka and the other cities? Maybe not. Dhaka, due to commodification, of course, has a larger problem. We have national policies We have acts, we have all these organization laws to protect from time onwards, which was amended. But I think the main problem was the lack of implementation is a big issue. Lack of implementation of law. Even if you have the laws, if it is not implemented, if people are not penalized for breaking the law, the vested interest will always use their power to take over such situations. The most important thing, like Professor Murshid has also spoken about Ruplal House. Who owns it? Yes, partially it is the army that owns it. Actually, who are the stakeholders of these properties? Many of these properties, this is a very political situation. If you talk about conservation, the situation of the political scenario also has to be taken into consideration. Like most of these properties were wealthy Hindu, and when the partition was taking place, they left or exchanged, and they left the country. So this was a division that the colonials used to divide the country based on religion. And earlier the affluent community was the Hindu community. So when the Muslim community came into power and they were in charge of it, the attitude towards these buildings were just simply very clearly understood why Ruplal House had turned into a vegetable spice godown and given to a army quarter. Army quarter came in a lot later stage, but it turned into a vegetable spice godown, warehouse. Most of the properties of Old Dhaka, where either the people are not there living, are used as warehouses. Coming back, I will talk about the government institutions. The DC office controls the vested properties, and what happens is the DC office leases out the properties to people at a very nominal price. And when you get to live in 2 rooms with your family, paying 100 taka, Bangladeshi taka, for a year, so you can very well understand that this person doesn't have the capability of maintaining that house. And that house, where there are 10 families now living as tenement houses, these houses do not have the facilities or the infrastructure to provide to these people. And so the dilapidation starts. And DC office does not take care of these houses either. They are more like a leaseholder. So there are power plays in giving out the properties to other institutions. Many of the institutions are used, like my previous speaker has shown some of the institutions being used as schools and colleges. Facilities department has given buildings to institutions, colleges to use them, and those buildings, even listed in the heritage list, has been pulled down. The principal doesn't know that it was within the list. Nobody knows about it. It is the archaeology department who has the list. Okay, when we first started the campaign, there was only in 1980 or 83, there was a small list of 35 buildings, out of which only 12 buildings from Dhaka was listed. So we campaigned about a list, and yes, if you say the campaign success was, we had a list of 93 buildings and 5 area conservation. But the day this list was gazetted, that was the day when one of the very important building of Shakhari Bazaar was pulled down, and we could not stop because of all the bureaucratic situation that works along with the vested interest. Government had done conservation, like when the British rulers were there, they conserved Lal Bagh Fort. That was the first conservation project. And then the next conservation project was done under Ershad rule, the Asan Manzil, and then the Asiatic Society building. So if you see what kind of a government had taken steps to do that, you will quite well understand what happened. That the talk about democracy doesn't work well with conservation. It was more the power that helped to make conservation happen. Government has been using many of the properties, but when it comes to protect them and not pull them down for a new development, government did not stop doing that. Like we lost the district council building just opposite the Judge Court. In 2019, we lost the railway building, which was conserved by the PWD. The architects conserved it, and then it had to go. So, you know, the scenario is very difficult. If I see archaeology department, it is under the cultural ministry. Cultural ministry, if you see the government ministry structure, it has a very weak role in the whole ministry, and it always boils down to, you know, we don't have resources, so we cannot protect. When we are so shortage of resources, how are you talking about heritage? So when we will be developed and when we will have resources, we might not have the heritage to talk about. So I think, you know, that there is a issue that Nigar Reza also pointed out, that if it comes down to that you are lacking in resources, using the building that is already there, trying to find out how it can be used, how economically benefit it can be, rather than wasting money to pull it down and investing more to build another one. So there should be a management of development. Protecting monuments are easier than protecting private properties. And economic benefit is definitely one of the biggest stumbling block for protecting the private properties. Why will the private properties owners, multiple or what, keep from not giving it away to developers who will make money and give you money, when the new part of the city is becoming affluent and well off by the same process? You cannot stop that. So that is why we had been talking about, he had been showing 45 Farashganj, Borobari. That was the building that we started talking about TDR, and it is transfer of development right. It's a planning tool, and it has been very successfully used not far away. It's in India to protect heritage properties. I think, you know, we don't have to invent a wheel. Our neighboring country, India, has been, not India as a whole maybe, Kolkata has already done wonderful work of restoring and protecting their heritage properties. How could they do, when the scenario is not too different from our scenario, except for densification. Yes, Kolkata always had a very good, commuting process for the population, so they could control their population density, which we failed. And I would like to say, if you see architecture heritage, what is it? The slides that we have been seeing about the archaeological sites, about the findings, what are we finding? We are looking into society, the intellect, and the culture of that time from those structures. So architecture reflects the society of the current time, right? City reflects that. And if I see Dhaka city now, I will obviously say that Dhaka city is a city for the fittest. Anybody who survives here will survive anywhere in the world. If you are an aged person, how are you taking the bus? How are you crossing the road? How are you going to a shopping place? Or how are you enjoying a movie? There is no facilities for older generations. So you can understand very well, it's the fittest who will be taking care, who will be enjoying the city, and the rest should go. So in the same way, you know, the old buildings will have to go and the new things will come. That is the attitude of the whole situation. Before I close, I would like to say our heritage conservation or our development issues are more like the traffic system of Dhaka city. We have the very expensive automatic control light, we have the police, and we have all sort of traffic. And the chaos, we spend hours spending. Dhaka is a very small city. You can walk from one end to another end. But we spend hours on the road. And it is becoming almost impossible to move. We are having flyovers, metro. I don't think those things are going to help us. But well, I would like to finish it in a very positive note. Thank you so much for calling me here. It was wonderful listening to all the expertise. And what positive thing I see is that many of the students who were the spirit of urban study group, or the time when I was working with them, I think that was their passion and their spirit made me going. And many of them have taken up heritage conservation as their masters and theses, and we hope that they will come back to the country and make a change. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Humayra Zaman, for your wisdom. We learned a lot from your local experience, from being an activist and an architect practicing in Bangladesh and Dhaka. And so sharing us the reality of it and the real steps to preserve our past. Now we are running a bit out of time, so at the session 3 we will ask our panelists to just share a little bit of their wisdom, just in 1 minute or 2 minutes, where to from here, not so much as a solution, but as a direction of topics. So I first request Dr. Philip to tell us in a few words. Dr. Philip.
No, just if you allow me, just 2 small thoughts about what we have, what I heard about, if you allow me to do so. The first thing is I share with our colleague Humayra Zaman. I share the same problems when we are intervening in the city. This is something I'd like very much to say. The second thing is I appreciate very much the intervention of Abu Sayed Mohammed, because what he really proposed is a very interesting thing. It is a kind of national research program, and also the practical side of this program. It is a very interesting thing that I want to, and he also commented attention upon another interesting idea, is we are facing different problems. We are really facing different problems in the cities. I mean, here in Europe, for instance, and in many countries of the Mediterranean and in Africa, The problem is the population is changing the profile of the cities. I give you a small example. In Brussels, the most part of the population is not anymore Belgium, is foreigner. So my question is, why I should have the same holidays in Brussels than before? Why I should, what to do with the new heritage that are coming to the city, that people, that the communities have in the city? What to do then? This is where I shared my concerns with these new approaches to the city. And this is why it is important to, from my point of view, in these cities that are larger and higher, to know exactly the really important role that architects play today, because sometimes it is better not to forget is the social responsibility about the city. This is something that I think is very important. The architects nowadays have a social responsibility that they cannot avoid. They cannot say, I'm not the expert on this. No, they are the most important, one of the most important tools for these public policies. This is what I want to say. And thanks to my colleagues and to you, the opportunity to say these small words.
Thank you, Dr. Philip, for summarizing and giving us some directions in this regard. Next, I'll request Architect Nigar Reza, if you can share some of your wisdom within a few minutes, please. You're muted. Yeah. You're muted, sorry.
The micro?
Yeah, no, I'm asking. Nigar, yeah, no, it's all right.
So I totally agree with Adnan Moshed and also Philippa about, and also Abu Said about talking about some of the research thing that we do, our heritage, our skills that is we are losing. And also strongly believe that heritage conservation is a coordinated team game. It's not a standalone thing. It's not only architects' job. It's not only historians' jobs. It's a combined thing. So we need all the stakeholders to act as heritage champions, like the architects, engineers, historians, archaeologists, and above all, the relevant aware communities. I think community is also very, very important because community is not educated about heritage. So we have to tell them, I mean, how you community consultation, how we aware community about heritage, about importance of heritage, you know. So it's a team effort and need to ensure uplifting the heritage agenda in the mainstream policy area rather than leaving it in an ad hoc activities. I just have to say work as a coordinated team to promote preventive measures to achieve long-term planning and outcome-focused activities on heritage. Thanks. And thank you, team. Thanks, Context, for allowing me to, giving me the scope to talk about it.
Thank you, Architect Nizar. Can I ask Dr. Mizanur Rashid?
Thank you, Shomik, for giving me the floor again. So I am actually in complete agreement with Professor Adnan Moshed that the first thing that we have to do is actually change our attitude in Bangladesh. And most importantly, the decolonization of the knowledge. And this should be done with this, the younger generation. Because whatever building is there, and because from my experience of working in the Paharpur case, but during my PhD, I found that the thing is that we always objectify the heritage building. So just there's no association with other meaning or memory, it's just object. And the problem is that when you think this is an object, so you can trade it off. And that's the same thing that Humaira, she was facing in her group, because the trade of the object, the heritage object is a commodity at this moment. So once you associate yourself with the building, then only you think that you can care for this, because it is within your world. It is how you share your things to the society through this building. It's part of your it's like your family is part of your whole thought process. So this should be done at the beginning, especially, I'm not saying about only the architecture students, but it should be done at the community level at different schools and colleges, and it should be included. So this inclusiveness is very important. And the second thing is that that Dr. Professor Abu Said mentioned that there is a very pragmatic problem of getting material and technology. And I'm also working with some of the buildings here in Australia, but my areas are mainly about the buildings that are absent, that are completely demolished. How can you retrieve the memory? So there are different tools like VR, AR, extended reality, all these kind of things that also can be used if the technology or the material or the exact expertise cannot be found. And sometimes it is in a way very effective because it is not very practical or sustainable to really physically restore the building in this current context, because it needs materials that involve a huge amount of carbon footprint and things like this. So we might think in that way as well, to using contemporary technology or in a way more on a hybrid way of restoring building instead of just a conventional kind of restoration. So these are the two key points that I think that we should think about. And these are also my takings from this little session. So thank you very much all, and wish you good luck and hope that we could meet in some other occasion.
Thank you, Dr. Mizanur Rashid. I know Dr. Abu Said has left for another meeting that he's chairing, and also Dr. Adnan Morshed also told me that he has another meeting, but if he's around, could you please turn on the camera? Otherwise, I'll move to Dr. Sajid Bindoja for giving us a quick summary or quick conclusion, if you like, about the direction next.
Well, thank you, Shomik. First of all, I think we do need to get a lot of awareness. We need to aware our nation, we need to aware our people. And we have to start it from the bottom of process, kind of, from the we have to start it from the primary school or something like that. If our syllabus, if the in the primary education, if we start now doing, say, awareness campaigning or something like that, so we can build the nation about the awareness of the heritage and cultural heritage matters. So I think this should be a national program. And another thing Philippi has already told, Professor Philippi, that a national research program should be integrated with this process. Another thing we can easily approach to the ministry, under the Ministry of PWD, we can have a conservation or a special forum for Heritage Council. Although we have a kind of Imaron Nirman Vidhimal or DNDC, we do have a different kind of 2 or 3 clauses there, but we have to make a council or congress from the ministry that should have a different secretariat. So I think the time has come to raise all this, all the issues to build much more awareness among the country people. This is my actually thoughts, and I'm just trying to share with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sajid. Okay, it's Humayra Zaman. Would you like to share in a few words, please?
I totally agree with Dr. Sajid and Dr. Mizanur Rahman that, you know, there should be programs for the school kids to know their region or their city, the heritage that is there. So if you know, if it is a program that is going to highlight those things, and it has to be communicable too. Like, you have to be there. It has to be within a reach. Like the heritage properties that, I'm sorry, I forgot his name. He was showing the...
Hasinur Reza.
Yes, sorry, Hasina Raza, yes. He was showing where are they located? Are they easy to go? Are they easy to see? You know, there has to be a simple map a child can see. And what happens if you reach the school kid? You reach a family because the school kid goes home and talks. We had those programs with our through our walks too. We tried to engage the school kids, and I think it worked a lot better. The best way to engage the community is to reach the kids through the schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the quick wrap up, and I would like to request Mohammed Sajjad Hussain now is a senior lecturer at Brack University and now doing PhD in Heritage Studies at the University of Evora, and is the main researcher for bringing up this discussion today. Sajjad, over to you.
Thank you. A heartfelt thanks to the panelists of today's symposium. Thank you, Shamik Wise, for coordinating the sessions beautifully. Thanks, Kabir, as well as Context Media and Bangladeshi Architects in Australia as convener and organizers. And thanks to Hasanur Reza for the beautiful photographs. Our past matters to retain the ingenuity and integrity of the nation, while now we are facing the risk of losing memories and identities as we go along with aggressive urban development, as suggested by Professor Philip. Architect Nigar Reza and Dr. Mizanur Rashid, they views the host of the memories as the palimpsest. It is very crucial to determine on how to critically exploit our heritage resources for the benefit of future generations. Perhaps we reconsider our architectural culture as the heritage narrative of 21st century. Dr. Sajid Pindoza re-identifies our crisis of losing heritage values in local level and stressed on to act at personally and communally to reverse the process towards global. In the context of challenged present of the treasured past, Professor Adnan Morshed and Professor Abu Saeed Ahmed illustrated methods in practice, approaches and tools, policies being followed, challenges, experiences, as well as opportunities in international and national scope. The practical field experience is priceless, I must say. Architect Humayra Zaman problematized the challenge of built heritage conservation in Bangladeshi context as a programming flowchart. That's the beauty of looking into the particular problem. And it is the best time for our nation to utilize the solution in real life beyond academia. It is now in our hand to determine the future of the past. The concepts and work packages can be multidisciplinary, as our panelists suggests. The structured approaches like institutional advocacy, governance, and civic society participation, they might be the keys. So I should hand over to Architect Shomik for closing. We are a little bit behind the schedule. Architect Shomik.
Thank you, Sajjad, for your summary. That's great. And thank you to all the panelists who patiently and succinctly have discussed all of the matters related to heritage conservation in this time period. I know we were at the same time lucky and fortunate, but to have so many experts in today's webinar. Later this year, we are planning a much more comprehensive workshop to determine ways to ensure the outcomes are being addressed and presented to proper authorities and in achievable actions. We will be using our international experts, examples, media, academic exercises to encourage creating heritage champions in Bangladesh, along with extending our support to the authorities to develop appropriate strategic and statutory tools to address the heritage and conservation agendas as part of the mainstream planning process rather than ad hoc actions. We'll keep you all up to date with these planned activities. And finally, I thank everyone on behalf of Context and Bangladeshi Architects in Australia, everyone behind the scene, and of course, everyone who brought this, the audience without whom we could not have done this today. Thank you very much. We'll keep you all up to date with all these planned activities, and take care and stay safe. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.